Hello again. This is the second part of the discussion or the lecture regarding the juristic decision in Islam that a wife should obey the husband in all matters regarding herself. In the previous episode, I examined the Quranic basis, if there is any basis at all. And in this video, we will talk a lot about a hadith. As I told you in the previous video, this juristic decision is based on hadith alone. Now, I specifically mention juristic decision because this is what it is, and in future lectures I will clarify a few things about what is Islamic and what is not, and who decided what is Islamic, because the general idea is that, oh, Islam says that. Well, Islam itself is a very abstract idea, is a religion, is a set of principles and values. It doesn't say that. There are specific, let's say, actors or stakeholders that they have set up such decisions, and we need to clarify that, but this is not for today's lecture. So without further ado, we will go to see the hadith. Again, the same source like in the previous lecture, Speaking in God's Name, Islamic Law, Authority and Women by Khalid Abul Fadl. I use the 2013 reprint of the book. This is for you to find the pages because I mentioned pages. So I will mention 4 different types or versions of hadith that have been employed in this juristic decision, and we will analyze them. So the first one, which is the most prominent and exists in many different versions, theoretically wants the Prophet to be sitting with companions, male companions, and the male companions asked him, do we need to prostrate on you or to you because you are the Prophet of Allah? And the Prophet said no, but according to several different versions, the Prophet continued saying, no human may prostrate to another, and if it were permissible for a human to prostrate to another, I would have ordered a wife to prostrate to her husband because of the enormity of his rights over her. So this part exists in different versions here and there. In the version that I'm reading to you, it continues and says, by God, if there is an ulcer excreting pus from his feet to the top of his head, and she licked it for him, she would not fulfill his rights. And we will go to one of the references, which says, according to Ibn Hanbal, Musnad 3-200, some versions of this genre of reports state that even if the husband's nose is oozing with pus and blood and his wife licks it, she will not do justice to him. And we can find this in Al-Hindi, Kanz al-Um'al, 16-338, and Ibn Abi Shayba, Al-Musanaf, 3-399. So these are all scholars that they somehow attribute to the Prophet that, you know, the wife, if it was permissible, the wife should prostrate to the husband, and should also, if the husband had passed, you know, bodily fluids of dirty bodily fluids, that even if the wife would lick them, then still the husband is higher than the wife, which is, I mean, how do you feel about that? I want you to just pause for a minute and tell me, how do you feel about that? Do you believe that the Prophet, the way we know the Prophet's character and we know the Prophet's love and respect to women through numerous occasions that have been recorded in hadith, and some of them have been mentioned in the Qur'an, do you believe that the Prophet would say something like that about women? I mean, this is common sense, which is one of the tools that is being employed or should be employed in fiqh, in jurisprudence, Islamic jurisprudence, for scholars to make a juristic decision. For me, this does not make sense. This is one of the hadith. The second hadith that is being used is again in page 212 of the same book and says, if a man calls his woman to bed and she refuses to come, the angels will continue to curse her until the morning. This is a recorded hadith that is being accepted. According to, before we go to Abu al-Fadl, every Muslim man I have met in my life, retells this hadith. The previous hadith, this last part, the disgusting part, I came across someone that has studied in Al-Azhar and he had never come across this hadith. But this one, the second, that if a husband wants sex and calls the wife and the wife doesn't go, the angels will curse her, it's very prominent, it's very known and employed by every Muslim man I know. So, if we go to page 214, Abu al-Fadl says, association, this hadith shows association between husbands and the symbols of divinity. A whole host of angels in the heavens are aggrieved by the frustration of a man's libido. This only raises the question, what is it about a man's sexual urges that make them so fundamental to the pleasure of heavens? Does this include all forms of pleasure by men or only sexual, etc.? The book continues. I suggest this book is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, this is also a questionable justification for a juristic decision that rules women's lives, daily lives, and very often oppress women. The third hadith is in page 219, and we read, if a woman prays 5 times a day, fasts Ramadan, obeys her husband, and guards her chastity, she will enter heaven. And I mean, I really want you to pause this lecture and contemplate a bit. Does it make sense to you? So the requirements for a woman to go to Jannah is that she prays 5 times a day, fasts Ramadan, obeys her husband, and guards her chastity. Abu al-Fadl tells us that this version is accepted by a fewer number of narrators than the first, and there are issues with the transmitters, whether they were, reliable or unreliable. Another issue that I have with this hadith is the fact that it changes the standards. We all know that every Muslim person has 5 pillars. So here we don't see anything about Hajj. We don't see anything about pay zakah. We only see pray 5 times, Ramadan, and obedience to husband. So does that mean that the Prophet told us that women Muslims have different pillars of Islam than male Muslims? Would the Prophet do something like that? Or women have more requirements? They need to, but here it only mentions 2 of the main 5 pillars. So what is it here? Is it different? Are the female Muslims different than the male Muslims when it comes to theological grounds and devotional grounds? Are they? Should they? Because the Quran says al-Muslimin wa Muslimat, Muslim women and Muslim men, and put them equal. Anyway, I will not go into the depth of analyzing everything. I'm just giving you the tools, and this is what I'm doing in this lecture and the previous. I am giving you the tools that a lay believer should employ to make sense of the humongous volume of nonsense requirements out there. So the final one is in page 220 and says, a woman's prayers, so this is another hadith that jurists have used to create this juristic requirement. A woman's prayers or good deeds will not be accepted by God as long as her husband is upset with her. Another tradition reportedly transmitted by Abdullah bin Umar claims that the Prophet proclaimed, God will not look at a woman who is not grateful to her husband despite her reliance on him. And yet another report claims that the Prophet said, right? If a woman upsets her husband, his angelic wife in heaven, his wife among the angels waiting for him, will say, may God confound you, blah, blah, blah. Now, what are the problems that we have here? I will tell you. We need to go in one of the notes. It is note 49 on page 252. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Fath al-Bari, 9294 says, another report of this genre asserts that every Friday there is a particular hour when all prayers will be answered except the prayers of a woman who had upset her husband. And the credentials are in the book. I cannot, prolong this video into diving into too many details. So does that hadith make sense to you? That even if a woman holds all the 5 pillars of Islam, she's a good human being, she's, but her husband is upset at her. And be careful. It doesn't say the woman did something horrific to the husband. It says this, the husband is upset at her. How many of you that you have been married or you have watched your parents, your siblings, your friends being in a marriage, in how many occasions have you come across a husband being upset with his wife without rational reason? I would say many times. But anyway, I leave it on you. So you see, all these ahadith, they prioritize the male even in comparison to God, I would say. Because if a female Muslim human being needs to please a male Muslim human being to attain divine grace and enter heavens, the whole idea, I mean, these hadith, they destroy the idea of oneness of God. Okay? Tawheed. The whole idea is that, contrary to other religions, in Islam, each human has direct contact with God, and our highest, or our the whole idea of worshipping God is that we are dedicated to God. We worship God. We don't worship husbands to be able to please God. There are many theological and there are many problems with this hadith, many problems. But I have talked in the previous lectures about these issues. Previous lectures in YouTube, in podcast will come after a while. Search for the titles. Anyway, all these hadith are wrong. Abu al-Fadl analyzes the wrongdoings in many of the hadith in the book. But to conclude the hadith role, before I give you my own opinion, is that these hadith, first of all, they shouldn't have been employed as the main source of this juristic decision, and also they create trouble to consciousness, which is one of the criteria in fiqh. They contradict the Prophet's character as we know it. A Prophet who is loving and caring and respectful would never say that, oh, even if the husband has, pus all over his body and the wife will lick it. This is disgusting. The Prophet didn't have this character, wouldn't say something like that. And also they conflict with the Quranic spirit. And this is another criteria. We cannot accept, if we have contradiction between hadith and Quran, we accept the Quran because Quran is priority. Here we have, these hadith contradict the Quran in two aspects. One is in Surah Al-Baqarah, second surah, ayah 178. God says, they, the spouses, the wives, so man talks to men, Allah talks to men and says, your wives are the garments of you and you are the garments of them. And many tafsir exegetes, they have also added that this means source of tranquility and rest. Also in the Quran, in the 30th surah, ayah 21, we read, let me find 21. Why it took me down here. I apologize for that. I'm sorry guys, I cannot spot it because the source is not coming as I should. Anyway, the whole I cannot memorize I cannot retell the ayah by itself, but says okay, I found it. And one of his signs, God's signs, is that he created for you spouses from among yourselves so that you may find comfort in them. And he has placed between you compassion and mercy. Surely, in this are signs for people who reflect. So we see how God here emphasizes the elements of comfort and compassion and mercy. To what extent a husband who forbids the wife from seeing her parents, or a husband who disregards the spiritual need of the wife to fast and forces her to have intercourse with him, to what extent this is compassionate and merciful? I don't think it is. So this hadith of prostrating the husband and, you know, if you don't please him, angels will curse you and Huri will curse you and you will not enter heaven, these contradict the Quran and shouldn't be even considered, shouldn't exist to begin with. But anyway, we saw in the previous set of the 3 lectures about the hadith criticism how and on what criteria hadith have been survived. Now I will give you, so the overall problems with this juristic decision that the wife should obey the husband. Personally, I reject it. I will never, ever, ever practice it. I will never accept any woman I know practicing it. I mean, I cannot stop her, but I will advise against, for the reasons I explained already. The overall problems is that Quran has been used as a secondary source in this decision, or whereas it should be the primary source. Quran has been misinterpreted, and all hadith are exceptionally weak, contradict Quran, give a different image of the Prophet. Now let's go to my personal opinion. And again, this is not a fatwa, I'm not a mufti, I am just someone that I like examining the details of all juristic decisions, and when I see wrongdoings, I call them out. My opinion is that no, you shouldn't obey blindly your husband, you should be kind to him. Marriage should be under different, requirements. If you are single, if you are not married yet, I strongly, strongly, strongly advise that you draft your marital contract, you put your terms and conditions, and you establish what you are happy to accept and what you will never accept. Those of you that you are on my social media, you know that I run, once every 2 months, I run a course about marital contract. And I don't mean this paper that they will give you in the mosque where it will be your name, the groom's name and the imam's name, and that's it. No, I mean an actual contract. Women in Islam have the right to draft their own contract. And don't leave anything in imagination, because the person that you and your husband or future husband are today will not be the same after 20 years. If you leave anything in, that, oh, he will never do that. You don't know that. And I'm talking to you as someone that I have been married several times. People are very sweet and very, with words they promise everything, or they make you believe that, yeah, everything will be fine. But then when the action comes, they, evoke all these juristic decisions to force. Do not leave anything in chance. If you want to see your parents, put it in your contract. If you want to fast whenever you want, put it in your contract. Everything needs to be in writing. If you are already married, and this is the sad reality, I think you're in trouble. To every woman that comes to me and tells me, oh, do I have to obey my husband in that? Immediately, my first thought is that what you have is not a marriage. A marriage should be based on love, compassion, understanding, and support each other. A very important issue is that if a Muslim man marries a non-Muslim woman, let's say a Christian woman, by juristic, law, he needs to provide the wife with whatever she needs for her religion. including things that they are forbidden in Islam. And I talk experientially based on a situation in my island. So in the past, in my island, we had mixed marriages because we had a great population of Muslims. And there are occasions where the Muslim husband would have wine on the table when the family of the bride or the wife would visit, because drinking wine in Christianity not only is permissible, is blessed. So if a Muslim man needs to facilitate the religious needs of a non-Muslim woman, shouldn't be the same with his Muslim wife. Why, when a Muslim wife needs to fast, a man needs to permit it? A man should do it. If the woman was married, let's put it the other way, if a Muslim woman was married and then to a non-Muslim man, if the first, the reason that the scholars, they don't permit that is because theoretically the non-Muslim husband will stop the Muslim wife from performing her religious duties. So if it is a non-Muslim husband, we don't accept that and we don't accept the marriage. But if it is a Muslim husband and stops the wife from performing her religious duties, which is fasting, for example, then it's okay. That doesn't make sense. So if you are married and you are a wife and you contact me or anyone else to ask whether you should obey your husband, reconsider of your marriage. If you are a husband, a Muslim husband, and you use this juristic decision to spiritually abuse your wife and convince her to please you in the name of, divine punishment, then you are not a loving, caring, supportive husband. You don't have a good marriage. So if you are already married and you find yourself often in contradiction to your consciousness regarding whether you should obey the husband or not, then, dear, you need to have a discussion with your husband. You need to see whether this marriage is viable and good for you. At the end of the day, Allah is the one who we need to please. That's all for today. I will see you in one of the future lectures. Bye.